Hi, Rebecca. I wanted to just do a quick video to talk about your presentation really quickly. Just a couple of things. When you are doing a presentation for the class, be sure to use the bullet points like you did, but your note section needs to be more descriptive. This is insufficient, okay? And as I go through the slides, you brought up a couple of good points which open up questions, but you don't actually follow through and describe or provide answers for the questions that you created with the information you provided. So I wrote some comments here on the side. Be sure to review those. Kind of like you mentioned contrast old education with new education. Well, what does that mean? What's the difference? How are they similar? How are they different? Okay, so points like that is what I'm talking about that you have to describe. Definitely use the note section so that you can really describe it. On the slide, you should probably only have about 6 bullet points, 40 words total, and the rest of your description should be on your note section. Okay. Explain why grasping Dewey's ideas on growth was so challenging. You mentioned that many theories have a hard time grasping it, but there's no mention as to why that's an issue. Okay, so be sure that when you bring up points like this, you actually kind of bring the reader all the way around. Assume that the reader is not familiar with John Dewey. That would probably be the best way to think about it. And then that doesn't mean that you cover everything. It just means that you cover the main points as it pertains to the topic, which is his theory. Okay. You said he seems more like a behaviorist, but objected to the theory of stimuli. Well, how or why does he seem more like a behaviorist? Explain that point in further detail. The other thing is there's a misspelling error here, there's a missing comma over here, there's a missing period here. All of these errors should have been fixed in your proofreading time. Okay? Same thing, the formatting after the name, you're always going to put a comma. And then if you're putting the page number, and you're only needing to put the page number if you're doing a direct quote, which I don't think that this is, it would be formatted this way. Okay? And then describe some of the differences in opinion of the order of problem solving. Here you say that problem solving doesn't happen in any exact order. Okay, well, what do researchers say? Okay. Then the same thing here. What are some of the actual misconceptions? You said that Kahn talks about some misconceptions that they've had about Dewey's ideas. So what are those misconceptions? Okay. Be prepared to answer those types of questions. Okay. Here, Dewey's contributions, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the actual presentation. Like, all of the extra background information is useful, but this is exactly what we were trying to get at, and it's very brief. This should be more descriptive as to how he contributed to education and what are some of the things that we have today that maybe possibly have stemmed from his influence. Okay? Same thing here, be more descriptive on how education is impacted by political parties and social norms. You bring up the point, but then you don't necessarily explain what you mean by that. And understand that the reader can interpret that in a numerous amount of ways. And maybe that's not what you meant. Maybe here you weren't talking about legislative law. Maybe you were just talking about ideals. So, for example, some parties believe that private education is better than public education. And other parties believe that public education is essential. So funding is shifted back and forth between private and public schools, depending on who the political party is in government. Something like that would have been useful to describe here if that's what you were trying to get at, or at least describe what you were trying to get to. Okay? Explain the points in depth. The same thing here. And then your conclusion should have definitely had some, like a paragraph here where you're wrapping it all up for the reader. Okay, again, this is where we get to the meat and potatoes. Like, why is he important today? Like, why should we read about Dewey? Essentially